Alright, I see the new meme that's starting on the channel. Every time I post a new video, someone has to point out something that's wrong with the Miata, and then 30 more people have to make that same comment. Now if you guys are trying to bully me into making more videos, I guess it's working. So today I'll be attempting to improve the cold start and idle on the VVT Beast on E85. My name's Greg Peters, and you are watching Car Passion. Started with my poor valve cover, which, let me just say, the $2 spray paint on that valve cover lasted about 2 years. We're going on 3 years now, and it's peeling. If you want a longer lasting, more durable valve cover finish, I would highly recommend looking into powder coating versus spray painting. And yes, I know 1,000 people out there have probably spray painted their valve cover, and it's lasted 59 years at full throttle, but keep in mind that a valve cover next to a 1,000 degree turbine housing lives a little bit different of a life compared to a stock header with a heat shield on it. It's subject to a lot more heat cycling, and yes, it's probably going to start peeling, but it's not that big of a deal. But then it was the dash rattle. Oh, and I always stuff something into the dash if it's rattling really bad, just so you can't hear it in the video. Because as you heard, it's super annoying. So yep, pretty much just epoxied the dash back together, and I guarantee it will not be rattling in this video. Look, this plastic dash from 1992 lives a hard life, man. It was never meant for the type of horsepower and grip that this Miata generates. It was meant for 90 horsepower on 185 tires. Give it a break, man. Speaking of cracks, look at the size of the crack in this windshield. It goes all the way across to the driver's side. I was just on a canyon run following one of my friends. They threw up a rock. It created a tiny chip, and now I gotta replace this whole windshield now because of this. All right, so let's move on to the main topic of today, which is me attempting to improve my startup and idle. Now, a couple things real quick. I am no expert in tuning, and some of the things that I do here might be wrong or out of order or incorrect. I'm simply just showing you guys the things that I'm looking into and the things that I'm adjusting to try to improve the situation on my car. Now, I also want to say that I'm just as lazy as the next guy, and that as long as the car starts up decent in the morning and it runs well once it's warmed up, oftentimes I just won't mess with anything. So it's still on pretty basic settings. I haven't done much startup and idle tuning, but now that I've been called out on the internet, I think it's time to make a change and see if we can get this thing to fire up a little nicer. First, I want you to take a listen to that startup from my previous video and just kind of hear how rough it was so you can see what we're dealing with. So before I jump into the squiggly lines and bits and bytes, I just want to say that I know that the standalone ECU and tuning content really isn't for everyone. In fact, usually when I post these videos, I actually lose subscribers. That's how many people are not into it. But there's a small group of people that I know really appreciate these videos, and these can be very helpful to them. So that's why I make them. Now, for those of you that have not jumped into a standalone yet, and you're still kind of considering it, but maybe a little timid or intimidated by how much, all the settings and just a billion different things going on, I have some videos coming up for you guys as well. I know this stuff's like very specific to my car, but I've got some more beginner type stuff coming up as well. Anyways, let's jump into what I have here, which is a data log from that startup that you just saw. All right, now this is the idle that everyone was questioning, and you can see the yellow line is the idle speed that's right here. At this moment in time is 628, but if I continue through the log, you can see it is pulsating between 600 and 1,000 RPM just repeatedly. And the first thing I noticed here is on the bottom section of the data log, I have my VVT angle, and the advance on the intake cam can have a great effect on the idle speed. So this is the VVT angle right here as we go through our idle, and you can see it's fluctuating a lot between 0 and 11 degrees. So I'm like, well, what the heck is up with that? Why is the VVT fluctuating so much? And the yellow line here is what the VVT actuator is doing. It's opening and closing repeatedly. So I'm like, okay, what the heck is going on here? So let me pop open the tune and we'll see if I can figure anything out from there. All right, so this is the VVT map from the base tune, and this is basically what I was running in my car. Now, your cam can be advanced anywhere from 0 to 44 degrees at any different RPM, at any different load. This is 100 kPa. This would be full throttle in an NA car. This, between 20 and 40, is, say, idle vacuum or coasting vacuum. And VVT is continuously variable. It's not an on-off switch, so it can be any of these different settings at any time you want it to be. Now, when your key is on and your engine is off, inside your intake manifold is approximately 100 kPa. So when your key is on and the engine isn't even running yet, the ECU is already calling for 16 degrees of advance. Now, as soon as you fire up your engine, you build up a bunch of manifold vacuum, and now it comes down, and now it's calling for almost no advance. And when that happens, oftentimes the idle will jump up a little bit because you had a bunch of cam angle and now you have no cam angle. So the idle jumps up and you lose some vacuum, and now it's calling for 10 degrees. And the ECU says, okay, we need to advance the cam to 10 degrees, and it throws some advance on the intake cam, and then as soon as you advance the intake cam, the idle drops. And it says, okay, hold on, only 3 degrees, and then the idle will jump up again. So it's basically the VVT oscillation that was causing this jumpy idle. So basically what I did to attempt to remedy this is, down at the 1000 RPM column, I just zeroed out the VVT. There does not need to be any cam advance during cranking, during startup, during idle. I just want it to be locked out at 0. So if the idle does pulsate a little bit, it's not catching another cell that's altering the cam angle, and that's gonna start throwing the idle way out of whack. So I played with that yesterday, I loaded in the tune, and now I have not started the car in over 24 hours. So even though the air outside is somewhat warm, compared to the temperatures that the engine normally operates at, I still consider this a cold start. So I'm gonna see how the car fires up with the new settings. I haven't cold started it yet since I mess with everything, and that's what's kind of tricky about cold start tuning, is you really only get 1 or 2 starts in the morning. Really, the first one is the only one you get until the car sits for several hours. All the fuel evaporates out of the cylinders, and you can try it again usually the next day. So let me fire the car up right now and see how it starts. All right, now of course I'll be data logging this very first start of the day, just in case there's any problems. I can try to check them out. But I want you to keep an eye on the very left column of the VVT table. See what path that dot takes. When I just go key on, engine off, it's just 100 kPa in the manifold, calling for no VVT angle. And let's just fire it up and see what happens. All right, look at that. It just stays locked out at 0 during the whole startup and idle, so it is not jumping around at all. Now, what I'm gonna do is change this table back, and I'm gonna see if I can replicate that oscillation and give you a good visual representation of this. So it's not as bad because the engine is a little bit warmed up now, but you could see on that initial fire, it had a really bad idle speed oscillation, and you could see exactly what was happening. Now, this issue was only plaguing my cold starts for a very specific reason. When the engine is cold, the oil has enough thickness to actually pull all that VVT angle. Normally when the engine's fully warmed up, the oil is so thin that there's no way you can get any VVT angle at idle or even up to like 2000 RPM. Now, I don't know if all VVT engines are like this or if it's just mine that's not able to pull enough oil pressure at that low RPM, but that's just how it is on mine. Now, I have my turbo oil feed coming off of that VVT line, so maybe that draws on some of the oil pressure that the VVT actuator can get, but it's really not that big of a deal to me because I really only care about the advance above 3000 RPM. I mean, when I'm on the freeway, I'm above 3000. When I need power, I'm above 3000. So That's really all I care about anyways, but that is the reason that that oscillation would only happen during cold start. Now, like I said earlier, my VVT map is pretty much just what comes on the base tune. I haven't done much tuning with it at all, but I really want to get on a steady state dyno so I can dial in that VVT tune, both in boost and just cruising for efficiency and just better, smoother power. And steady state dynos are really where it's at because they can hold your engine at a specific RPM and measure the power that the car is generating at that RPM, at that load, and you can really tune your maps cell by cell. The spark map, the VVT map, the fuel map, everything. You can get really dialed in, particularly just for cruise tuning. Just on the freeway, you want to get the best fuel mileage. You know, people ask like, oh, can you make a map where you get good gas mileage and then another map where you have a lot of power? You can do that all in the same tune. You just have to work with the different areas of each map in that tune. And maybe I'll dive into that more advanced tuning stuff later on in the videos, and it's gonna be me learning. It's gonna be me learning and then telling you guys about what I've learned, because like I said, I'm no professional, but I just have the drive to learn about all this tuning stuff. So if you guys enjoyed the video, if you learned something, don't forget to smash that like button. If you're new, do me a favor and hit that sub button, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.